Hello, everyone, and welcome to Bookercast, the podcast where books come to life.
And I'm so excited to dive into another amazing story with all of you.
Whether you're a bookworm or just love a good story, this is the place for you.
Every episode, we explore incredible books, talk about their stories and characters, and share insights that'll make you fall in love with reading all over again.
All right, let's not keep you waiting any longer. Get comfortable, and let's jump right into it.
Sounds good.
Welcome to our deep dive into James Clavell's Shogun. This
Yeah.
historical fiction epic.
It's a classic.
It throws us headfirst into 17th century Japan.
A fascinating period.
Imagine being shipwrecked in a completely foreign land.
I can't even imagine.
Where the language,
Right.
the customs, even the way people think is different.
It's mind-boggling.
That's John Blackthorne's reality.
Talk about a culture shock.
And we're going to explore his incredible journey through feudal Japan.
What makes Shogun so captivating is how Clavell doesn't just tell a story.
Yeah.
He builds a world.
He does.
He drops you right into the heart of 17th century Japan,
Wow.
a land ruled by samurai
Right.
and steeped in traditions that are both fascinating, and to a Westerner like Blackthorne,
Yeah.
utterly baffling.
Right from the start.
Yeah.
We're introduced to Blackthorne.
This English pilot
Yes, an English pilot who finds himself
at the mercy of Lord Yabu
at the mercy of Lord Yabu.
after being shipwrecked.
I mean, talk about a culture clash.
Oh, absolutely.
He goes from commanding a ship
Right.
to being a captive,
A prisoner, essentially.
struggling to even communicate.
It's a real trial by fire.
That initial sense of disorientation
Yeah.
is crucial to understanding Blackthorne's journey.
Absolutely.
He's stripped of everything familiar,
Everything he knows.
forced to adapt or perish.
It's a sink or swim situation.
And it's through his eyes that we, the readers,
Mm-hmm.
begin to grasp the complexities
The nuances.
of Japanese society.
It's a whole new world.
One scene that really struck me early on
Oh, tell me about it.
was the execution of a man in the street,
Oh, wow.
simply for not bowing low enough
Yeah.
to a passing samurai.
Talk about a stark introduction to the power dynamics of this world.
It's brutal.
Exactly.
That scene isn't just about violence.
No.
It's about social hierarchy.
The strictness.
It shows how deeply ingrained respect and obedience are
It's ingrained in their culture.
within this society.
One mistake
One perceived disrespect.
can have deadly consequences.
It immediately establishes the stakes for Blackthorne
Right.
and underscores the importance of understanding these intricate rules
The rules that govern this society.
that govern this society.
It's like a different game entirely.
It makes you realize that for Blackthorne, every interaction
Every single one.
becomes a potential minefield.
You said it.
He's constantly walking on eggshells,
Trying to decipher.
trying to decipher customs and etiquette.
That are completely foreign to him.
And it's through those mistakes
Those cultural faux pas.
that Clavell highlights the vast gulf
Yeah.
between East and West.
The clash of civilizations.
He's showing us through Blackthorne's struggles how much we take for granted
In our own cultures.
in our own cultures,
Our own assumption.
how even simple gestures can have radically different meanings
The context is everything.
in another culture.
Take the scene where Blackthorne is offered a male consort
Oh, yeah.
and reacts with horror.
What's considered a sign of hospitality in one culture
Mm-hmm.
is utterly taboo in another.
It shows the vast differences.
These moments of cultural misunderstanding
Yeah.
aren't just played for laughs.
No.
They reveal the deep-seated assumptions
And biases.
that each culture carries.
Absolutely.
And these clashes
Yeah.
aren't limited to everyday customs.
No.
Blackthorne's arrival also coincides with a period.
Of intense political turmoil.
Intense political turmoil.
Japan is on the verge
Yeah.
of a major power struggle.
With various daimyos
These feudal lords,
vying for control
they all want the power,
and the ultimate prize,
becoming shogun,
becoming shogun.
the supreme military dictator.
It's like Blackthorne has been thrown into a game of chess
A high-stakes game.
where he doesn't even know the rules.
You're alone the players.
And the stakes couldn't be higher.
Think about it.
Okay?
He's a pawn in this game.
A pawn.
Valuable because he represents a connection
Yeah.
to the outside world
To trade in knowledge.
that these powerful lords crave.
But he's also a potential threat.
An unknown element.
An unknown element that could disrupt.
Their carefully laid plans.
We see this play out
Yeah.
in the tension between Lord Yabu
Who sees Blackthorne as a valuable asset to exploit,
and the more cunning Lord Toranaga.
who recognizes the potential danger Blackthorne represents.
And caught in the middle of this power struggle,
Is Blackthorne
trying to survive while navigating a web
of alliances, betrayal,
and simmering rivalry.
He's constantly forced to adapt
The language,
the customs,
the political landscape, just to stay alive.
It's a matter of survival.
But it's not just about physical survival, is it?
No, it's not.
He's also undergoing a profound internal transformation.
And change from within.
He's forced to confront his own preconceived notions.
His biases.
About the Japanese. About this East versus West dichotomy.
That he arrived with.
He
had a lot to learn.
Blackthorne initially sees the Japanese as barbarians, savages. Their customs as strange and even repulsive.
So different from his own.
But as he's forced to interact with them,
to really engage,
to learn their language,
to understand their motivations,
his perspective starts to shift.
It starts to change.
There's a scene where Blackthorne participates.
Oh, I love this scene.
In a traditional tea ceremony.
It's so elegant.
With a courtesan named Kiku.
Kiku is a fascinating character.
It's a beautiful glimpse into Japanese culture.
Full of ritual
and subtle symbolism.
It's an art form.
But it's also a moment where Blackthorne, despite his initial discomfort,
he was a little out of his element.
Starts to appreciate the artistry and elegance.
The beauty
of this foreign tradition.
He's starting to see beyond the surface.
Yes.
To appreciate the complexity that lies beneath.
And that journey of cultural understanding is further complicated by the presence of Jesuit priests.
Oh, yes.
Like Father Sebastio.
And Father Alvida.
They represent another layer of cultural clash, this time within Blackthorne's own Western worldview.
The Jesuits are fascinating.
They are.
Because they embody the complexities of cultural exchange.
On one hand, they're trying to understand and adapt to Japanese culture.
In order to spread their faith.
On the other, they're also trying to impose their own beliefs and values.
It's a delicate balance.
Viewing Blackthorne as both a potential asset and a threat to their mission.
He's a wild card.
It highlights the inherent challenges of intercultural communication.
Misunderstandings can happen so easily.
The potential for both understanding and conflict.
It's a double-edged sword.
When different belief systems collide.
And Blackthorne is right in the thick of it.
He is.
He's caught between his own Christian upbringing, the pragmatic world of European trade, and the intricate web of Japanese beliefs and customs.
He's forced to constantly reevaluate his own assumptions.
His own sense of right and wrong.
As he navigates this complex landscape.
It's a constant learning process.
And guiding him through this maze is Mariko.
This noble woman.
Who acts as Blackthorne's translator and cultural interpreter.
She's more than just a language tutor.
She is.
She becomes a window into the soul of Japan.
Mariko is a fascinating character.
She embodies the internal conflicts.
Within Japanese society itself.
Bound by tradition and duty.
Yet she's also intelligent.
Independent.
And drawn to Blackthorne's different perspective.
Yet their relationship is more than just a romantic subplot.
I agree.
It's a microcosm.
Of the cultural exchange happening on a larger scale.
They challenge each other's assumptions.
They learn from each other.
And in the process, they begin to bridge the gap between their worlds.
And their bond deepens.
As Blackthorne's situation becomes increasingly precarious.
Remember when his ship, the Erasmus,
his lifeline to the outside world,
is looted and he discovers his precious charts and navigational tools are missing.
That's a turning point.
It is.
It strips him of his perceived power.
His ability to navigate and escape this world. He's forced to rely entirely on the Japanese.
The very people he initially viewed with suspicion.
And disdain.
It's a humbling experience that forces him to confront his own vulnerabilities.
His dependence.
And to acknowledge the depth of his dependence.
On those he considered inferior.
It's a real wake-up call.
This sets the stage for a deeper level of cultural immersion.
He has no choice but to adapt.
To learn the Japanese way of navigation.
The Japanese way of survival.
And let's not forget about the constant threat of violence.
It's a dangerous world.
Blackthorne is targeted by assassins.
Imprisoned
in a horrifying pit.
Nearly killed.
And nearly killed on more than one occasion.
It's a reminder that this world, for all its beauty and intricate customs, is also a place of brutality.
And danger.
That element of danger is crucial.
I see what you mean.
Because it raises the stakes for Blackthorne's journey.
It's not just about understanding a different culture.
No.
It's about surviving.
In a world where one wrong step could be fatal,
He has to learn quickly,
adapt.
to become more than just an observer.
He has to become a participant.
It's almost as if he's undergoing a kind of...
Cultural baptism by fire.
Yes.
And it's through those trials, those moments of extreme vulnerability and danger, that he truly begins to shed his old identity.
And embrace a new way of being in the world.
It's a transformation.
It is a transformation.
A metamorphosis.
Metamorphosis.
And that transformation becomes even more pronounced as Blackthorne is drawn deeper into the political machinations of feudal Japan. Remember when Lord Tornaga sends him on a mission to the port of Osaka?
Yes. That's when we really see Blackthorne's understanding of Japanese culture being put to the test. He's tasked with assessing the strength of the Christian daimyos and their Portuguese allies, essentially acting as Tornaga's eyes and ears in enemy territory.
He's walking a tightrope, trying to gather information while not betraying his loyalty to Toranaga. And it's in Osaka that he gets a glimpse of the seductive power of his own culture, the world he left behind. He's invited aboard a Portuguese ship, surrounded by the familiar comforts of European luxury.
I found that scene incredibly poignant. Here he is surrounded by reminders of his own world, and yet he feels like an outsider. He realizes he no longer fully belongs to either world. He's caught between two cultures, two identities.
It's a moment of profound alienation, but also a moment of clarity. He's starting to see that his journey is not about returning to who he was, but about forging a new path, a new understanding of himself and his place in the world.
And that new path is fraught with danger. He tries to save a group of Japanese prisoners from execution, an act of compassion that backfires spectacularly.
It's a stark reminder that even with the best intentions, Blackthorne can still make disastrous mistakes. He doesn't fully grasp the intricate web of social obligations and cultural norms that dictate behavior in this society. He's learning that good intentions aren't enough. You need a deep understanding of the context, the unspoken rules, to truly navigate this world.
It's like he's starting to realize that true integration requires more than just learning the language and customs. It requires a shift in perspective, a willingness to see the world through a completely different lens.
And that shift is a gradual process, marked by both triumphs and setbacks. Remember when Blackthorne is given a house, servants, and a beautiful consort named Fujiko? On the surface, it seems like he's being accepted, even rewarded.
But there's an underlying tension there, isn't there? It feels like Toranaga is trying to bind Blackthorne closer, to make him more dependent, more entangled in the web of Japanese power dynamics.
Exactly. It's a subtle form of control. Toranaga is recognizing Blackthorne's value, not just as a source of information, but as a potential player in the game of power. And he's using the trappings of comfort and luxury to draw him further into that game.
It's fascinating to see how Blackthorne, despite his growing understanding of Japanese culture, still struggles with the feeling of being an outsider. Remember that scene where he confides in Riko about his frustration with Japanese customs, and she gently challenges him to see things from a different perspective?
That scene is pivotal because it highlights the importance of empathy in bridging cultural divides. Mariko isn't just explaining the customs, she's helping Blackthorne understand the underlying logic, the cultural values that shape those customs.
It's a reminder that true understanding requires more than just intellectual knowledge. It requires an emotional connection, a willingness to step outside our own preconceived notions and see the world through another's eyes.
And that kind of empathy is essential for Blackthorne's survival, both physically and emotionally. He needs to understand not just the rules of the game, but the motivations of the players. And Mariko becomes his guide, his teacher, in navigating this complex and often treacherous landscape.
Their relationship is a fascinating study in cultural exchange, but it's also a deeply human story about connection trust and the challenges of bridging seemingly insurmountable divides.
And that connection deepens as they face shared dangers. Remember when Blackthorne tries to protect Mariko from her abusive husband, and his actions nearly get them both killed?
That scene is so intense. It's a reminder that even in their moments of intimacy, the threat of violence is never far away. And it highlights the fact that Blackthorne, despite his growing understanding of Japanese culture, is still an outsider, subject to the whims of those in power.
It's a harsh lesson in the limitations of his influence, the precariousness of his position. He might be gaining knowledge and understanding, but he's still vulnerable, still walking a tightrope in a world where the rules are constantly shifting.
And speaking of shifting rules, let's not forget about the constant political intrigue that's simmering beneath the surface. Lord Toranaga in a brilliant display of cunning stages his own kidnapping. It's a move that throws everyone off balance, and Blackthorne is right in the middle of it.
That kidnapping is a masterstroke of political manipulation. Toranaga uses it to test loyalties, to expose his enemies, and to consolidate his own power. It's a high-stakes gamble that showcases his strategic brilliance and his ruthlessness.
And Blackthorne is caught in the crossfire, trying to figure out who to trust, what the ultimate goal of this elaborate scheme might be. It's a reminder that he's still a pawn in this game, even as he's becoming more aware of the rules.
And his understanding of those rules deepens when he discovers Toranaga's secret, the truth about the legendary sword that symbolizes his right to rule.
That revelation changes everything. It reveals the depth of Toranaga's ambition, the lengths he's willing to go to achieve his goals. And it puts Blackthorne in a precarious position. He's privy to information that can make him a powerful ally or a dangerous enemy.
It's a turning point for Blackthorne. He can no longer simply observe. He has to choose a side. His actions, his loyalties will have a direct impact on the outcome of this power struggle, on the fate of Japan itself.
And that's where Clavell leaves us at the end of this part. Hanging on the edge of a precipice, Blackthorne is no longer just a shipwrecked sailor. He's a player in the game, a participant in the unfolding drama of Japanese history.
He's come a long way from the bewildered outsider who first washed ashore. He's gained knowledge, understanding, and even a measure of influence. But the question remains, what choices will he make? Will he use his newfound understanding to help Toranaga achieve his ambitions? Or will he find another path, a way to reconcile his own values with the realities of this complex and often brutal world?
Blackthorne, at the start, he was just a shipwrecked pilot, but now he's not only navigating Japanese culture, but playing a role in its destiny.
And we as readers get this incredible crash course in 17th century Japan.
I know, right?
Clavell immerses us.
Yeah.
We experience the rituals, the etiquette, even the language right alongside Blackthorne.
One thing that really stood out to me was how Clavell portrays the language he weaves in Japanese terms throughout the book.
Not just for flavor.
Right. It's not just like a sprinkle of exoticism.
It illustrates how Blackthorne's understanding of the language reflects his growing understanding of the culture itself.
Exactly.
Remember, early on, he struggles even with basic greetings.
With the different levels of formality.
The respect embedded in the language.
It's like he's learning a secret code.
And as he cracks that code,
he starts to see the world through a different lens.
He begins to grasp the importance of honor.
Of duty.
The complex web of obligations.
That govern relationships.
And that brings us to one of the central themes of Shogun.
What's that?
Bushido, the samurai code of honor.
Right.
It's not just about swordsmanship and martial prowess. It's a way of life, a philosophy that permeates every aspect of samurai culture.
Clavell doesn't shy away from the brutality of this code, the violence that's often intertwined with honor.
We see this in the ritual of seppuku,
the samurai suicide,
which Blackthorne initially finds barbaric.
Oh, yeah.
But later comes to understand as a form of preserving honor in the face of defeat or shame.
Seppuku is a powerful example of how Clavell challenges Western assumptions.
What might seem like a senseless act of violence is, within the context of Bushido, a deeply meaningful act of self-sacrifice, a way of upholding one's honor even in death.
It's a reminder that to truly understand another culture, we need to set aside our own judgments and try to see the world through their eyes.
To grasp the internal logic.
The values that shape their actions.
And that's exactly what Blackthorne is forced to do throughout the novel. He comes to Japan with his own set of values, his own understanding of right and wrong.
But those are constantly challenged.
As he witnesses the samurai code in action, the way it shapes decisions and defines relationships.
Remember the scene where Buntaro Mariko's husband commits seppuku?
It's a heartbreaking moment.
It is, but it also reveals the depth of his commitment to honor, to duty.
That scene is so powerful because it contrasts Blackthorne's initial horror with his growing understanding of the cultural context. He begins to see the act not as a defeat, but as a triumph of the spirit, a way of choosing death over dishonor.
And it's through Mariko that Blackthorne comes to understand another key concept in Japanese culture.
Giri.
Giri.
The complex web of social obligations that dictate behavior.
It's about duty.
To one's family.
To one's lord.
To one's society.
Mariko embodies this concept.
She's torn between her love for Blackthorne and her duty to her husband, to her lord. And ultimately, she chooses Giri over personal happiness, a decision that highlights the power of these social bonds in Japanese society.
In this world, individual desires are often subservient to the needs of the group, the preservation of social harmony.
And it's something Blackthorne, with his individualistic Western worldview, struggles to grasp.
He's learning, though.
He's observing, adapting, and integrating these concepts into his own way of thinking. And as he does, he starts to see the strengths, the resilience of this culture, even as he recognizes its limitations.
Let's not forget about the role of women in this society. On the surface, they seem subservient, bound by tradition and duty.
But Clavell also reveals their strength,
Their intelligence.
their ability to wield power in subtle ways.
Look at Mariko. She might be bound by Giri, but she's also incredibly resourceful, intelligent, and capable of influencing events in ways that men often overlook.
She uses her knowledge of courtly etiquette
Her understanding of social dynamics
to manipulate situations to her advantage.
and to protect those she cares about.
And then there's Kiku, the courtesan, who teaches Blackthorne about the art of the tea ceremony.
She's not just a beautiful object.
No, she's a skilled artist, a shrewd businesswoman, and a source of wisdom and insight.
Through these female characters, Clavell challenges Western stereotypes about Japanese women. He shows us their complexity, their inner strength, and their vital role in shaping the social and political landscape.
And throughout all this, Clavell keeps us on the edge of our seats with the political intrigue, the power struggles, the constant threat of violence. He masterfully weaves together the personal and the political, the intimate and the epic, creating a story that's both sweeping and deeply personal,
The final chapters are a whirlwind,
of action, betrayal, and suspense.
as Toranaga's plan to become a shogun comes to a head.
We see Blackthorne's loyalties tested, his newfound understanding of Japanese culture pushed to its limits.
And then there's that devastating earthquake,
A force of nature that upends everything.
a reminder that even the most carefully laid plans can be shattered in an instant.
That earthquake is a powerful symbol. It represents the chaos that underlies even the most ordered societies, the unpredictability of life itself. And it forces Blackthorne and Mariko to confront their own mortality, the fragility of their hopes and dreams.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Shogun, what stands out to you as the most enduring legacy of this novel?
For me, it's the way Clavell transported us to a world that was, for many Western readers, completely unknown. He didn't just tell a story, he created an experience of visceral immersion into a culture that was both fascinating and challenging. And he did it with such meticulous research, such a deep understanding of Japanese history and culture, that Shogun continues to be a touchstone for anyone seeking to understand that world.
And he achieved that through the eyes of John Blackthorne, a character who is forced to shed his own preconceptions to embrace a new way of seeing the world. His journey is a reminder that true understanding requires more than just knowledge. It requires empathy, a willingness to step outside our own comfort zones and see the world through another's eyes.
And that's a lesson that's as relevant today as it was when Shogun was first published. In a world that's increasingly interconnected, where cultures are constantly colliding, it's more important than ever to cultivate that sense of empathy, that willingness to bridge divides and seek common ground.
If you haven't already experienced the world of Shogun, I encourage you to dive in. It's a journey that will stay with you long after you've turned the final page.
And for those who have already read it, perhaps this deep dive has sparked new insights or questions. It's a book that rewards rereading, revealing new layers of meaning with each encounter.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Shogun.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll see you next time.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of BookerCast. We hope you enjoyed diving into it as much as we did. Thank you so much for spending your time with us. Your support means the world, and we can't wait to hear your thoughts on this episode.
Don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, and share this episode with your fellow book lovers. And let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing from you. See you in the next deep dive. Bye for now, and happy reading.